On December 30th, 2023, the Russian city of Belgorod endured one of the most devastating civilian attacks of the entire conflict. Ukrainian forces launched rockets from multiple launch systems into the city center during daylight hours when streets were crowded with people. The barrage was not targeted at military sites. It appeared intended to inflict maximum harm on civilians. Rockets equipped with cluster munitions struck residential neighborhoods, markets, shopping centers, and busy public areas where no military presence was reported. The timing is Saturday just before New Year's, and the use of indiscriminate cluster weapons, banned in many countries, suggests an aim to create widespread fear and casualties among non-combatants. These munitions scatter hundreds of submunitions over large areas, striking anything in their path. 25 civilians lost their lives, including 4 children. More than 100 others were wounded, many with severe shrapnel injuries requiring long-term care. Apartment buildings, homes, vehicles, and playgrounds were reduced to rubble. Streets that had been filled with everyday activity, people running errands, returning from work, or buying holiday groceries became scenes of destruction and loss. Families preparing for New Year's celebrations were shattered in moments. Parents buried children, children were left without parents, and partners lost loved ones. Many victims were simply passers-by, some shopping for gifts, others walking with family or seeing off relatives. This attack proved a turning point in how ordinary Russians perceived the war. For many living far from the front lines, the conflict had felt remote, confined to border areas. The Belgorod shelling changed that. It showed war reaching peaceful cities and normal lives. People who had never considered air raid shelters or sirens suddenly faced horror. The deaths of children just before the holidays deeply shocked the nation. Discussions shifted on social media, in homes, and on streets from terms like special operation to recognition of a war affecting the innocent. Many who had remained neutral now felt personal threat. A wave of solidarity swept the country. Aid collections, volunteer trips, and messages of support poured in for Belgorod residents. The strike was chaotic and indiscriminate. Cluster rockets covered broad zones occupied solely by civilians. This was not collateral damage. The choice of timing and targets points to deliberate intent to maximize terror and loss among the population. Belgorod, a city about 40 kilometers from the border, was living its usual routine. Children coming home from school, adults preparing for celebrations. Everything changed in an instant. Videos from the scene, showing wreckage and the injured, spread nationwide, heightening a sense of shared tragedy. Rescue workers toiled for hours amid risks of follow-up strikes, clearing debris and aiding the wounded. Today, a memorial stands in Belgorod honoring those killed in the attack, a place of remembrance for people who lived, loved, dreamed, and never saw another dawn. Families bring flowers and toys in memory of the children. Belgorod, the country mourns with you. This tragedy has become a symbol of how war can invade the most ordinary day and destroy everything. It strengthened unity among many Russians while leaving an enduring wound of pain. The city carries on. People return to work, children to school, but with a lasting scar in the heart. The memory of December 30th, 2023, will live on as long as those who knew the victims remain. Belgorod has become an emblem of resilience, yet also a reminder of the price paid by innocent civilians. In 2025, Germany has significantly reduced its approved arms exports, particularly to Ukraine. According to official figures from the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, from January 1st to December 8th, the government issued licenses for weapons and military equipment totaling 8.4 billion euros. This is markedly lower than the record highs of previous years, 13.33 billion euros in 2024 and 12.15 billion in 2023. The drop represents nearly a 37% decline from 2024, the lowest level since 2022. The main driver of this reduction was a sharp cut in deliveries to Ukraine, down sevenfold. from 8.15 billion euros for the full year of 2024 to just 1.14 billion in 2025. Ukraine, which previously dominated the list of recipients up to 60% of total exports, has fallen to third place. Norway took the lead with 1.31 billion euros, largely big orders for Leopard 2 tanks and Type 212 submarines. Turkey came second with 726 million euros, the highest figure for Ankara since 1999, tied to upgrades of its air force and air defense. Following the government change in May 2025, a CDU, CSU and SPD coalition led by Chancellor Friedrich Merz, exports worth 5.39 billion euros were approved, of which Ukraine received only 483 million, less than 9%. German officials, including those from the Economy Ministry and Foreign Office, explained the decline with several factors. First, much of the current support for Kyiv relies on licenses issued earlier, under the previous traffic light coalition of SPD, Greens, and FDP. Second, funds are increasingly channeled into long-term projects, joint production, investments in Ukraine's defense industry, and training programs. Third, Ukraine is actively building its own arms production, with Rheinmetall factories and other joint ventures already launched or planned. Additionally, the new coalition stresses confidentiality. Details of aid are kept secret to avoid informing Russia about volumes and types of supplies. Experts note that the published numbers cover only direct exports requiring individual licenses, not the full scope of military assistance. Some aid flows through Ukraine's direct purchases from manufacturers, framework agreements, or non-lethal equipment like body armor, radars, and medical supplies. The overall volume of German support for Ukraine in 2025 is estimated at around 9 billion euros, including budget allocations and European programs. The reduction in arms exports to Ukraine reflects shifting priorities in German security policy. The record years of 2023 and 24 were driven by the Zeitenwende Chancellor Olaf Scholz's turning point announcement after Russia's full-scale invasion. Berlin then became the second largest arms supplier to Kyiv, after the US. Now, focus is moving towards strengthening the Bundeswehr itself, aiming for 2% of GDP on defense by 2028, and deliveries to key NATO allies like Norway, which is bolstering the alliance's northern flank. This aligns with a broader European trend. A war of attrition is depleting resources, military, material, financial, and political, for all involved parties and donors. Conflict fatigue, economic challenges like inflation and the energy crisis, and domestic political shifts, rising support for AfD, and budget pressures are limiting the scope for continued generous aid. 2025 is likely a transitional year, the last with relatively high direct arms deliveries to Ukraine from Germany. Future assistance may shift toward investments in Ukraine's defense industry, joint projects, and long-term training programs. Amid the winter campaign, global changes including the new U.S. administration with its focus on China and domestic constraints, Berlin is adjusting its strategy. It seeks to balance support for Kyiv, NATO commitments, and Germany's own national security interests. For Ukraine, this means greater reliance on self-sufficiency in arms production and seeking new sources of aid. If you enjoyed this review and want to be the first to know about the main events in the Russo-Ukrainian War, subscribe to the channel, give a like, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss new videos. Your support helps us continue our work. Thank you for being with us.